Now, in a previous video, we talked about doing OpenSSH, and we talked about how we can connect to it using a username and password. Now, we can also set it up using certificates. So I'm back on my demo machine, and I'm going to generate a certificate and send it to my other machine so that I can use the certificates to authenticate rather than using the password. And this is actually more secure, partially because it means I don't have that password running back and forth whenever I'm trying to authenticate to the remote machine. Even though SSH sends it in an encrypted fashion, I can just eliminate that entirely. So here's how this works. This is the client computer demo that I'm going to use to connect to my other server, um, the test machine. So if this were my workstation, I would generate it on my workstation, and then I would copy that public certificate to all the servers that I'm going to connect to. So let me show you how this is going to work. I'm going to issue the command. It's SSH-key gen. So this is key generation. Now, it's going to ask me where I want to save it to. So it's going to generate a public key, private key, RSA key pair. Now, the private key should stay with this machine and never leave it, never be attached to anything else. The public key can be moved. So where are we going to store them? The default location is in a .ssh folder in our home folder. That's going to be good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Now I can add a passphrase. I don't have to. Passphrase is going to give you a little more security. So in order to connect, you're going to need both the private certificate, the private key, and you're going to need the passphrase. You can choose not to use the passphrase if you don't want to. It is a little bit more secure. It also adds a little more complexity because now when you're connecting, you have to enter that passphrase every time. And there are ways to mitigate that using an SSH agent, but you're still going to have to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it with no passphrase for the moment. And then I would enter that same passphrase again. Okay, and now it's generated the key. So your identification has been saved. Your public key has been saved in home David SSH id-rsa.pub. Here's the key fingerprint. Here's the random art image. So I'm going to I'm in my home folder, and I know that because I see the tilde in my path. I can also do pwd, which says I'm in my home folder. Notice if you do an ls, you're not going to see the SSH folder. If I do an LSLA, then I'm going to see my .ssh, but it's hidden because of the dot in front of it. So I'm going to do cd space .ssh. And here's going to be all of my files. So I have IDRSA, I've got IDRSA.pub. Now remember the IDRSA, that's my private key file. That should never leave this system. The ID_RSA.pub, that's the one I'm going to copy over to the server I want to connect to. And so the way I do that is using the command SSH copy ID. And do -I, and then I'm going to specify the file name, ID_RSA.pub. Now I need to do the whole full path if I wasn't in the folder where it's located at, so I can get away with just doing that. And then the system that I'm going to copy it to is 10.1.1.11. So that's going to have me log in once. So I need to enter the password, David at 10.1.1.11's station. So I need to put in the password, which I think I just mistyped. Oh, there we go. ABCD 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Okay. Number of keys added. So it basically logged me in just enough to upload that authorized key or that public key. So now I should be able to connect without putting in a password and just authenticating using the key pair. So I'm going to go to SSH 10.1.1.11. And I'm in. So nothing that I had to deal with. Notice that I'm on david.test now instead of david.demo, which is where I was right here. So I'm into my remote system. Now I want to show you one thing. I'm going to go to cd.ssh here. And you're going to see an authorized keys folder or an authorized keys file. I'm going to cat that file real quick. This is where that key got copied to. And that is my SSH RSA key right there. So now I can use that key. Now remember, had I set up a passphrase, then I would need that passphrase as well. But since I didn't, all I need to do is SSH to that particular device, and it will authenticate me using my public key, private key pair.